Hello again, Doug Smith, and this is the 25 April 2014 edition of Portsmouth This Week, the voice of Portsmouth Town Hall. Special guest today on the program is Bill McGlinn, the General Manager and Chief Engineer of the Portsmouth Water and Fire District. Welcome, Bill.
Good to be here.
If you don't mind, I'll just call it the Water Board from here out. It keeps it simpler. But
that's fine.
Before we talk about the Water Board itself, I know you got some news you want to share with everybody. Could you talk a little bit about your own background and, you know, how you got into this business?
Sure. I have a degree in civil and environmental engineering from the University of Rhode Island, and I've worked for a private engineering firm when I first got out of college, and worked in sewer, gas utility to a degree, and water, and eventually was doing some side work with Portsmouth Water, and they eventually wanted to hire a general manager and an engineer, and it fit well for both of us at the time. It was supposed to be a short-term deal, and I was going to go back into engineering practice, but it's been 25 years.
25 years. So you're a Portsmouth resident now, I would
I have been since 1962. We ended up here, my dad was in the Navy, ended up here, lived in Melville, and he retired here, and I went to college here and ended up staying.
Great.
Just like many Navy people retire here, I stayed with them.
The Navy's a common denominator here. We got a lot of people that are Navy folks here. Okay, on to the Water Board itself. The organization is kind of interesting. When people go on your website, they can read about it, but you're separate. You're a government, quasi-governmental organization, but you're separate from the town of Portsmouth. Now, how did this become like this, and what's the purpose?
There are a handful of quasi-water systems in Rhode Island. Ours came about in the 50s when Island Park and Common Fence Point were on wells and had cesspools, as we all know from the sewer issue, and they needed a water system. So the original district was called the Island Park Common Fence Point Fire District because it also provided water for fire protection. That district was created, incorporated by charter from the General Assembly, and it was made separate from the town so that the town's finances wouldn't get commingled with a water system in a certain corner of the town.
Okay.
They bought water from Stonebridge Water at the time, which has a similar district. They got up and running in the 40s, and they had the treatment plant and the water, so they were able to sell that to that small district of Island Park and Common Fence Point. In the mid-60s, that district expanded, and the name gradually changed to the Portsmouth Water and Fire District. That expansion was necessary because of wells at the, I'd say, the southern end of Portsmouth were starting to go bad, and there was some pressure for development. And the well water that was used, the well water at that end of town is coming out of rock, high in iron, high in manganese, a little bit problematic for drinking water for a house. Sure. The well water they had in Island Park and Common Fence Point was in the sand, and it was fine until they started getting the contamination. In the southern end, they needed water mains in order to get development to occur because the water's not good otherwise from the wells in the rock. That's essentially how it started and how it expanded. The quasi-municipality part of it has always been good for two reasons. One, the district is separate from town government, which is good for town government, and it's good for the water ratepayers. The Water Board focuses strictly on water issues, and they're able to, and it's in a nonpartisan way generally. And the district can set its rates and charges based on its needs without impacting the town debt service, the town budget, etc. And like I said, there's a number of them in Rhode Island that are set up similarly.
Okay, now I know you service most of Portsmouth, the majority of Portsmouth. There are a couple of places that you don't.
Right.
And where are they, down on the southern end of the
They are. We service most of Portsmouth on Aquidneck Island. We don't service any of the islands. They're outside of our district.
Okay.
We also don't service the southwest corner of Portsmouth. Redwood Farms, the Bayview Towers area, the condos, Raytheon. Those areas, because they're so close to the Newport water plant, were tied into the Newport water system when they developed in the late 50s before the water district expanded to the south. So they were already Newport water customers when our district expanded. So they are carved out of our district. They're part of Newport's franchise area.
Okay. Well, it's got a complicated history. you ask somebody, it's a long story, it turns out.
There's nuances to everything we have.
Well, who is on the water board, and how are they selected, and what do you guys do?
Originally, the district had 9 elected officials. Now it has 7. That was changed in the 1990s.
Okay.
Would you like me to give the names of the board
No,
members?
that's okay. I think those are available online.
They are. There's 7 board members. Each of them has a different elected title, generally, except there are 2 tax assessors. Overall, the board is run by majority rule. The elected officials elect their own chairman to run the meetings and to interface with the staff. The officials are elected every year. We have an election every year in June, the 3rd Wednesday of June. 2 officials are elected in one election, 3 officials.
Okay, so it's a rolling.
It's a rolling board, 3 in the next election, and then a different 2 in the next election. So you've got all 7 of those positions. 2 are turning over 1 year, 3 in next year, 2 the next year.
Okay, now, do any of those require engineering backgrounds or backgrounds in your field?
There's no requirement, similar to town council. You have to be a registered voter in the town of Portsmouth. In our case, you have to be a registered voter within the district.
Okay. So the major functions of the district, the water board, I guess, is to provide fire water support and also provide fresh water support to most of Portsmouth.
It is. I mean, essentially, the function is one of health and safety. Domestic water for health, water for fire protection, obviously for safety.
Yeah.
The fire district is a bit of a misnomer. We don't own any fire equipment or a fire apparatus. We're not interconnected with the fire department. We provide the water and we provide the hydrants so the fire department of the town can fight the fires.
Okay. I know there's a lot of changes going on. That's one of the reasons you're on the program here today. What are some of the major ones that you'd like to discuss?
The biggest change is how we bill our customers, how they can pay their bill. We're in the process, literally as I'm sitting here, we're getting ready to send out our bills. The bills we send out in the next few weeks will be the last annual bill we send to our customers. Now, keep aside, there are about 46 quarterly customers already. They're large users. They've always been quarterly. The rest of the users, the 6,500 of them, have been yearly. They're now going to be quarterly customers. This bill they get soon is going to be the last annual bill they get. Thereafter, they're going to be billed on a quarterly basis. But we're doing this in a way that helps the workload in the office. We're going to bill a third of the customers 1 month, a third the next month, and a third the next month. So we'll have 3 different cycles. That first transitional quarterly bill, some customers may get a bill for 2 months of usage, some 3, and some 4. After that transitional quarterly bill, everybody will get a usage bill for 3 months of use.
Okay.
We're excited about it.
Well,
and
that's
our
because you'll
customers
have a
should be
continual
too.
stream then, essentially.
It will certainly improve our cash flow, and it will be easier for the customer to pay the bill. There's been significant improvements made to our system and to the Newport treatment facilities over the last few years. The bills are getting high, and they're difficult to pay on an annual basis for a lot of people, for most people. This quarterly billing will actually help everybody.
I think anybody that drives by on West Main Road, the major construction that's been going on for a couple of years now at Lawton Valley Reservoir, can understand why bills will be going up. How do you go about billing people? And we have an example. I guess this is the future kind of bill we're going to see, right?
This is the next bill you will see.
Okay. Can you explain some of the different features of this thing?
Essentially, it contains the same information as the prior bill. However, it's now on a 8.5 by 11 sheet as opposed to 6 by 4 sheet. It has a bigger stub, and I'll explain that stub in a minute. One of the most important changes in this bill is that we will now show the customer the historical use over time. We're showing 13 quarters of historical use on this bill. As we get through 13 quarters, you'll be able to look back and see 4 years worth of usage and be able to compare your current bill with the 4 prior quarters. I should state that we have a handful of customers, large water users, that are going to be on a monthly basis. That's a dozen and a half. It won't affect the residential customers.
Will these be corporate or business users?
Yeah, the ones that use the most amount of water. As an example, Portsmouth Abbey,
Schools,
it's a school, and they use an awful lot of water because they have dormitories and whatnot.
Sure.
And they'll be switching over. So in their case, they'll be able to look at a whole year's worth of usage by the month.
Okay, now, again, we expect the bills will be going up, and we'll be talking about the reasons why in a second, but is there any kind of a minimum charge or anything?
We have a minimum charge in place now that is ending.
Okay.
That's been in place for a long time, and one of the reasons is that the board needed a minimum amount of revenue up front because they didn't bill the customer for a whole year. And one of the few things we got a number of complaints on was the minimum charge. That's going away. People will pay for their water based on the actual gallons they use. And there'll be no charges in advance. At the end of the bill, there'll be a base charge for that month, a water use charge for that month, and the cost to bill the water, to do the billing, collect the information and bill it. So you're essentially going to have a base charge that includes the cost of the meter that we have to maintain and replace, the cost of the service line from the main to the property line that we have to maintain and replace over time, the cost to collect, gather, and send the bill to the customer will all be in one base charge, and those will be announced after our board meeting on Monday night. So that piece is going to be billed in arrears rather than up front. The usage will be billed in arrears. The minimums are gone, and I think a lot of people are going to be happy about that.
Sure, particularly if you don't come up to the minimum, absolutely.
There are many people that are very conservation-minded, and they try to stay under that 20,000 gallons that we had. We're still looking at how we're going to bill the water. We're probably going to have a rate, a different rate for the first 20,000, a lower rate, and then higher rates above that. I'm not sure how that's going to ferret out yet.
Okay.
But those will now be broken into quarterly amounts. So it would be 5,000 per quarter for that 20,000 that used to be for the whole year.
Okay, how do people pay these bills? Obviously, you can send a check back in by mail. Is there any online way or anything like that that people can pay?
We will have online capability. We have a web portal that's being developed, and that should be available by June 1st. There are going to be a number...
This June 1st?
This June 1st.
Okay.
There are going to be a number of ways to pay your bill. Obviously, you've got the old check in the mail and cash at the office. But we'd like to discourage people from coming into the office because it takes us longer to take care of those accounts. If people want to do that, they're still welcome to, but we're providing a lot of opportunities to pay the bill easier. We will be doing ACH withdrawals from customers' checking accounts if they would like us to. On the day the bill is due, we withdraw the funds from their checking account electronically. They can go onto our web portal once it's up and running, and they can pay their bill with a credit card at no cost to the consumer. The fees are built into our rates. We want to encourage people paying their bills other than foot traffic. They can also do an e-check on the web portal. The other thing on that web portal that's nice, they'll be able to go in there and look at their current bill. So when they go in, they don't have to have their bill in front of them to pay their bill. When they go on that web portal, they're actually going to our website, which will put them into our vendor site that shows their bill to them, shows them what they owe, when it's due. It'll show them their history, just like the bill we mail to them. And they'll be able to decide to pay the bill or pay part of the bill at different times.
Sure.
So we're looking forward to that taking effect.
That's great. That's really a leap into the 21st century. It'd be nice if we can get everybody to do it that way, I think.
You're starting to see water systems move this way, and although we're not regulated by the Public Utilities Commission, Pawtucket Water, which had the commission's approved for them to use credit cards and build that cost into the rates so that customers are more willing to use the credit card because they're not paying a fee.
Sure. One of the things, too, that, we talked about this a few minutes ago, but the new automatic metering system that was put in like last year or the year before, that's also high-tech, as we were talking about. Could you explain that a little bit? Because I thought people had to drive by with a truck and get a signal from everything, but you're saying that doesn't have to happen.
And that's true. We looked at those types of systems, but the cost for getting a system where you don't have to drive by was nominally more because of the technology changes. Our system, basically every customer has a device on their house. It's got a radio transmitter in it. And that transmitter is collecting an hourly meter reading off their meter. And at midnight, those readings are uploaded to a collector in their area. We have 9 collectors in the town. And when those readings hit the collector, they're then uploaded to the internet through a cell card and go to our vendor's host site. When our staff comes into the office in the morning, they can see the meter readings every hour for every meter out in the system.
Wow, that's great.
And don't think we have time to look at all those. We don't. The software does some amazing things. It will alarm us if somebody is using water for 24 hours straight. If you're using water 24 hours straight, there's a good chance you got a leak. Now, we can only pick up 10 gallons at a time with the meter and with the radio. But 10 gallons an hour equals 0.17 gallons per minute. That's a toilet leak. If it's there, we'll usually see it. So when those occur, if it's a toilet type leak, you can tell if it's just 10 gallons an hour. We will send a notice to the customer by mail and hopefully by email in the future. Our new billing system will allow us to take email addresses from customers, and we can send them notices by the email process. By the way, they can give us their email address and phone number through that web portal when they go on it. That makes it easier for us and for them. They'll get a quick notice, and if they're away, they'll get it on their smartphone.
Yeah.
This winter was the first real test drive of this system all winter long, and we had at least a dozen major leaks. These were leaks anywhere from 200 gallons an hour to 800 gallons an hour. And in most cases, the customer was obviously not aware of them, otherwise they would have stopped them. We're talking about pipelines that froze and people were away, pipelines that froze in a garage that the customer didn't know it was leaking. The water was going into the ground through the sand floor or whatever. And when those kind of leaks occur, our staff tries to find the homeowner. In one case, we had a homeowner that was having an 800 gallon an hour leak. They weren't home. We had no information on them in terms of email or phone numbers. We started knocking, one of our operators started knocking on neighbors' doors and found a relative, somebody had a relative's phone number. We got a hold of the relative and the relative got a hold of the owner.
Yeah.
We'd like to make that an easier process.
Sure, save them some money for starters.
If you give us your phone number and your email address and you're on vacation and you have a major leak like that and we notice it, we'll be able to let you know right away and you can have somebody take care of it. You don't lose hours of water dumping into your house and ruining your property.
Yeah.
So it's an amazing system. It's working well. It's working as advertised. And
that's great.
It's real neat technology.
It is very neat. I think the idea that it's all done automatically like that is the good thing.
Well, it allows us to free up the operators to do maintenance,
absolutely,
hydrant maintenance,
sure,
valve maintenance, system maintenance, to preserve the system and keep costs down.
Okay, speaking of costs, let's talk about water sources. And where do we get our water from here, basically?
Since 1999, we've been buying all of our water from Newport Water.
Okay.
Prior to that, we bought some water from the Stonebridge Fire District in Tiverton. Newport owns 2 treatment plants on the island. One is at Lawton Valley, diagonally across from Raytheon or
right,
the Alameda Towers there. And they own a water treatment plant on Bliss Mine Road in Newport. The water that we get predominantly comes from the Lawton Valley treatment plant. Those 2 plants are being upgraded. Actually, I shouldn't say upgraded. The Lawton Valley plant is being replaced in its entirety. Brand new state-of-the-art plant. The Station 1 plant in Newport was built in '92. That one's being upgraded. Lawton Valley was built in the late '40s by the Navy, so that one's really old. So when these plants are done, we've got a couple of things that are going to happen. First of all, there'll be $85 million worth of debt service that Newport has to pay for those plants over 20 years. Every water user on the island is going to participate in that. There is no choice.
Sure.
Those rates are affecting us just like they're affecting Middletown and Newport, just like they're affecting the Navy. And some of those rates have been passed on to the customers in Portsmouth already through our retail rates. In addition, we're going to have improved water quality generally. One of the reasons these plants were built is because of past violations by all 3 island water systems, Portsmouth, the Navy, and Newport Retail, of the Safe Drinking Water Act. The Safe Drinking Water Act is implemented by EPA, legislated by Congress, and there are certain restrictions on disinfection byproducts. When you add chlorine into water, it will react with organic matter in that water and create trihalomethanes, which are EPA classifies as a carcinogen. Now, it's not an immediate health threat, but EPA says if you drink water high in trihalmethanes over a long period of time, you may develop certain cancers of the soft organs, kidney, liver, those types of areas. We were marginally in and out of that level, which is 80 parts per billion, which is a very
80 parts per billion.
That's the equivalent of 80 seconds in 32 years worth of seconds.
Yeah.
Now, 30 years ago, we weren't measuring things that small, but it can be measured now. EPA wants it below that level on a 4-quarter running average. That's the primary driver for these new plants that Newport built. And we pushed for them to be built. We agreed they needed to be built, and we're willing to help pay for them. That will eliminate that problem. It will also help with taste and odor issues. These plants are going to have advanced water treatment, carbon filters for filtering media, and carbon contactors to polish the water at certain times of the year when trihalmethanes can be high, disinfection byproducts can be high, and when there's taste and odor. I jokingly tell people when they call with a water quality complaint that in a few years, we're talking next year now, they won't be complaining about the water quality, they'll be complaining about the price. There is a cost to treat this water.
But it's something we have to do.
We have to do by law to stay in compliance. And you have to understand that we're not the Situate Reservoir here. Newport owns 9 small reservoir ponds, and they're shallow. And raw water quality in them can be challenging for Newport to treat. These new plants will handle that. But there's a price to it. I mean, we're ultimately looking at probably water bills in the $600 a year range. You divide that quarterly, it's a little more manageable. In Portsmouth, we have a tax bill which provides us some of our revenue. That's roughly $60 to $80, depending on your assessed value. So you're looking at a water charge of 50 to 60 gallons a quarter. Well, actually, that's not correct. It's $60 a month. I'm sorry. Get my numbers mixed up. And when you look at that compared to cable bills, electric bills, heating bills.
Fact of life, prices go up.
And it's still a bargain, and hopefully people will be happier with the water quality as well.
Let me talk about the back end of that, though, before the water gets into the reservoir. We had Chuck Allett from the Aquidneck Land Trust on a couple of weeks ago. He talked about protecting the watersheds from being developed. Is that an issue that you guys I would think you'd be on board with that pretty much?
We certainly are, and we lend our opinion whenever it's asked or whenever we feel it's warranted. All water suppliers are concerned about protecting the areas around reservoirs. If you can keep the source water as clean as possible, it reduces the amount of treatment you need, it reduces the potential for a contamination event, and it actually lowers the cost if you can protect the source water. It's a little harder on a developed island like Aquidneck Island as opposed to the Situate Reservoir or the Quabbin Reservoir up in Massachusetts.
Yeah, and I think when people realize it's our water source they're talking about, you can see how serious it is to try to do that. Let me ask you another question. You talk about additives and things, and I know you put fluoride. Fluoride goes automatically into these water systems, most water systems, I would think. I remember back a few years ago, people were concerned about that. What does fluoride do, and have there been any negative results from use of fluoride?
Well, first of all, fluoride was started in the water supplies, I want to say, I think it was in the 50s. And the reason it was put in was to reduce dental caries in children.
For teeth, right? For
primarily for teeth. There are some residual benefits for osteoporosis in elderly, but it's primarily a developmental issue with teeth with children. There have been groups that have opposed it, using slogans like mass medication, etc. There are arguments that fluoride's a poison and the chemical companies are just trying to get rid of it. That's not the case. If you have too much fluoride, it's a problem. Water systems out in the West that use groundwater have natural fluoride that has to be removed before it goes to the consumers. We have none. Newport Water adds fluoride to a level of 0.7 parts per million, milligrams per liter. And that's the recommended dose by the Center for Disease Control. The Center for Disease Control highly supports fluoridation of water supplies. Now, I'll give you the anecdotal evidence we have. There was a time prior to 1999 when we were buying water from Stonebridge Water. the north end of Portsmouth was getting that water from Stonebridge which was not fluoridated, and the south end was getting water from Newport.
Okay, so you have data points to...
that was fluoridated.
Yeah.
And the school dentist came to us in the mid-90s, around 94, and asked us if we could get fluoride in the water on the Tiverton supply. His point was that he is seeing anecdotal evidence in the schools, depending on which school he went into and where the children lived, of differences in dental caries in these kids. Our board jumped on it immediately. We talked to Stonebridge Water and Tiverton. They were not interested in putting in fluoride, so our board spent $150,000 to build a facility in Tiverton where we buy, at the point where we take the water from Stonebridge, and we put a fluoride facility in. That's not used much now because we're buying all the water from Newport. But when a school dentist comes to you that's looking at every children's mouth in town and says that, you take notice. And it's consistent with the data that the Center for Disease Control puts out.
And as far as I know, there's never been any negative thing from fluoride in the water that I've seen anywhere.
Not that we're aware of.
Yeah.
But when a water system today in other parts of the country try to introduce fluoride, there is a groundswell in some areas that don't want it, and it usually comes to a public vote.
Speaking of just water's quality, I know on the website it says that our water is basically medium hard. I guess, will that be the same when the new treatment plant there at Lawton is fully up, and will it still be basically the same hardness?
It will be a little bit softer,
okay.
but marginally. Our raw water source is hard. And when we
say hard, what do you mean, calcium or something?
It's calcium, yeah. It's based on calcium chloride. It's not unusual for a New England water. And it's not hard where it creates major problems. It may require a little more soap in the dishwasher, that type of thing.
I've never really noticed it because I'm used to it, I guess. So
yeah.
The other thing we want to talk about, we're almost running out of time, see how fast these things go.
It does go fast.
Is Code Red. I know you've had Code Red for, over a year, and I know you guys use it because I've received things from you about water problems or issues. How do you think it's working out?
We find it works well. And we're using it right now mainly for notifying customers if we have to shut down a water main for a main break or for maintenance of some sort. But more importantly, I think everybody's aware of the Kent County water contamination last summer. They didn't have a way to notify customers. We do. So if we have a boil water order that we need to issue, our first response is to go to Code Red and notify customers. So we encourage every water customer to sign up for Code Red if they haven't done so already. We're probably 60–70% saturated now. That means there's another 30–40% that aren't going to hear from us if we have a major problem.
Okay, well that's something we should encourage everybody to do, is go on the website and sign up for Code Red to make sure you get these things. Bill, thanks so much for coming in and letting us know what the new changes are. Really appreciate it. You guys perform a much needed function down there and keep up the good work.
Thank you. Glad to be here. It's perfect timing for us.
Yeah, I'm glad we got you on board here. That's it for me. Doug Smith signing off. This is our 99th show. And next week, we've got a special for you, so stay tuned for that. Thanks very much. See you next time.